And good evening, race fans. Welcome into the Oxford Plains Speedway. We'll bypass some of our introduction here for a couple of moments because, Justin, we're all ready to go racing. The cars are gridded up. We're ready for heat number one. We'll get it in the format for this event in just a moment. But before we get rolling, your thoughts?
This is going to be a special event. Many of these drivers have been racing together in such a prestigious league that's been going on for decades, for a long time. I think it's going to be a fun night of action. It's going to be tough, though, because for those who do not know, Oxford Plains is very difficult to drive at. It could be a bumping and banging type of race tonight to try and make it into the main event next week.
And speaking of making that main event, we'll take the top four for the Trophy Dash and for the main event next week for FTF's Oxford 250 as the green flag flies over the Oxford Plains Speedway. It is Roswell Harlow who qualified on the pole. For every heat race, we'll have qualifying amongst those competing in that heat. He'll lead lap number one, utilizing what will typically be that preferred inside line that you're going to see here at Oxford Plains the whole night. And now Kevin McAdams on the outside looking in. Qualified outside the front row, but is looking for an opportunity to try to get down.
A lot of big names in this race tonight. Stewart gets a shot from Kevin McAdams, one of the drivers from the Firecracker 400. He's got nose damage. Forced to fight now with Brandon Hawkin, while Warren Key tries to hold on to P3 for the time being. Brian Mercurio, one of the upcoming stars for Lowline Racing now, looks to get himself in the battle for the bubble spot.
And Mercurio just got his first career win at FTF last week. He qualified a little bit further back, I'm sure, than he wanted to. But, Justin, I think early on we're learning that you do not want to qualify second. You want to go after the pole, but McAdams is going to have to settle in sixth now. 20 laps in these heats. And, again, top four transfer to the main event, as well as a trophy dash for tonight. This is the preliminary events, qualifying events for next week's Oxford 250. We'll get to where that'll be broadcasted in a couple of moments as well. But right now, side-by-side battle around that transfer spot. It's Brandon Hawkin and now Warren Keith faced with a decision. How hard does he want to fight Hawkin? And how quickly does he want to get to the bottom? Mercurio looking for a nose. Oh, he almost gets it into one.
And McAdams also gave him a shot just about down the back straight away. Mercurio forced to lock it up. He gets pushed forward by McAdams. They're starting to pile up a slight judge for P5. Bit of a chuck up here. Now the question is, can Warren Keith hold on? It's 3/10 of a mile. 3/8 of a mile specifically, rather. Meaning these lap times are quick, about 15, 16 seconds. You're essentially going straight for about 200 to 300 meters, then immediately have to go right back and return. It can be very difficult to try and set up a pass, but also difficult to make sure you don't burn up your equipment early.
Well, and we'll see a battle right around that transfer spot. As you mentioned, you're nearly in a constant turn here at Oxford Plains. Side by side for second as Hawkin looks to go forward, but the battle for the transfer is on. Is way outside the groove is Warren Keith. Mercurio into the curb. They make a little bit of contact as now Keith's going to try to hang on to fifth to get back. But here comes Seth DeMerchant as he makes contact with Keith looking to get to the bottom side of the racetrack.
A lot of the big names have had a hard time getting some track position. Already under 10 laps to go. DeMerchant gets a shot. He's pushed up the racetrack. Keith's pushed onto the groove. McAdams now buoyed his way up to P5. Now it comes the question, I think, Blake. Can Brian Mercurio, one of the top drivers in the Road to Pro Point standings, after so many races for Lowline, inside the top 5 for Dr. Bob, can he run away from McAdams and hold on for 8 more laps?
Well, and that's no easy task. Kevin McAdams obviously been a part of FTF racing since its inception in NASCAR Racing 2003 season. As they wrap that league up in that sim on Sunday nights, they'll return to or make a move to iRacing next season. So this is the lone iRacing league for FTF at the moment. The FTF Grand National Series presented by Splash and Go Graphics. Again, looking to try and set the field for next week's Oxford 250. But right now, McAdams not necessarily possessing the same speed as Mercurio, or at least not enough to chase him down. We'll approach it this time by 5 laps to go. It was, for the moment, Roswell Harlow up front, but Brandon Hawkin, another regular in FTF racing and competed in the Verizon Cup Series last season. He has stretched his lead to roughly 0.6 of a second over the second place running Garlow.
What a good run from Hawken to be able to run off and away from Harlow and company. But keep in mind, that battle for fifth is going to be very interesting, to say the very least, because here's the thing. With the consies, the driver who finishes in P5, Blake, in this specific race, starts on the front row alongside the driver in heat race number 2, meaning if you do not hold on for dear life here and not just fight for the bubble spot, you may have to deal with a lot of track position as the fight for fifth sees Merchant nearly turn.
And DeMerchant rolled up onto the back of Brian Mercurio as they'll take 2 laps to go this time by. DeMerchant all over Mercurio. He's going to give him a shot into one. Power move for Seth DeMerchant. Move him up into the transfer spot. And now Mercurio gets tagged. Makes a 90-degree spin. Somehow able to save it. But now white flag in the air. Seth DeMerchant now takes possession of that 4th and final transfer spot. Is it going to be enough for McAdams to run him down? Into 3 and 4 for the final time. It'll be Brandon Hawken who takes the win. But Seth DeMerchant bullies his way by Brian Mercurio. And after getting slid further back earlier on by Kevin McAdams, DeMerchant is able to make his way to be one of the top 4 with Hawken, Harlow, Nate Stewart, and DeMerchant included to move on to the Trophy Dash and Oxford 250 next week.
And a bit of Tepper's Flare, to say the very least, to start off this event. You can see the full results now on your screen. You can see P9 and 10, and Adam, Cadeau, and Margot, unfortunately not able to finish this race. Don't look now, though. Remember, they still have the Consi to think about, and they still have the chance to try and fight for the last chance qualifier throughout these various heats tonight.
They certainly do. It is not the end of the night for those drivers, and like you mentioned, the driver that brings it home in the 5th position, which for this heat is Kevin McAdams, he gets to start on the front row for that consolation race that he'll be taking part in a little bit later tonight. So good for him to see, as we're going to do a little bit of server hopping right now as we search for heat number 2 that'll get rolling here in just a matter of moments. Again, we'll take this time to walk you through a bit of the format that we'll see the big picture tonight, since we got started right before they took the grid in this one. So these are qualifiers for next week's Oxford 250. There is $160 up for grabs tonight that will be paid out amongst the top 10 once we get to the Trophy Dash later on tonight. But the format that we'll see, again, you mentioned it, top 4 will move on from these first round heats into the Trophy Dash race and eventually the main event next week. The Consi round will come up next for all these drivers that didn't make their way through. They'll take the top 5 from there as well. There's also a 50-lap last chance qualifier that we'll get later on tonight that'll set the stage for our Trophy Dash. And then the main lineup, 250 laps, that'll be taking place next Saturday night. And should be a heck of a show to see 250 laps around Oxford Plains. I can only imagine, Justin, how that'll go.
Yeah, this is going to be absolutely crazy, to say the very least, tonight. We've seen some of the aggression, what some of the drivers are willing to do just to fight for P3, P4, and P5. I think we're going to see the exact same type of racing throughout the evening. These drivers are not afraid to be aggressive. It's going to be very competitive, to say the very least, Blake, with how many talented drivers there are. Not just drivers with FTF history, but some of the other names, including eNASCAR drivers who have come out to compete, such as, say, Caden Cook, and a few others.
Oh, there's definitely no shortage of talent that FTF has accumulated here in the FTF Grand National Series presented by Splash and Go Graphics. It was a questioning move for a lot of the brass over here to finally leave NASCAR Racing 2003 season, which has long been a mainstay for this league, even if you can imagine 18 years after the release of that sim. I've even competed in that series this season, the main Cup Series that is taking place on Sunday nights. That will also make the transition over into iRacing this season as you take a look at our race format that is being presented for us tonight. Again, we mentioned just a little bit earlier the heats, the consolation races that are eventually on tap, the last chance qualifier that'll be taking place tonight, and then a 30-lap dash for the cash. That, Justin, is not a points race. Obviously, we'll move on to the Oxford 250 next week. More money, more prizes on the line. But there's really nothing to lose for these drivers. So that trophy dash, 30 laps at the end of the night, that's going to be something to see with really nothing to lose for a lot of these drivers.
Absolutely. It's a chance to see how they may fare against some of their competitors, what the speed's going to, I think, look like for some of the drivers. I think it's going to be a fun, interesting race, to say the very least, for that trophy dash. But also glad to see, too, you see at the bottom right, Podium Esports coming on board for the Oxford 250 main event. Remember, 32 drivers at the very minimum looking to compete. And don't forget, payouts go to each driver who leads a lap under green, 50 cents sack per lead lap.
Oh, no doubt about it. I think it was David Schoedhaus who was talking about earlier on his stream that he was hoping that he just led one lap so that some poor admin would have to just throw him 50 cents on his PayPal. So a bit of humor out of David Schoedhaus, as always, as, again, you can get a nice look at the format for next week. And of course, we get to mention that next week, the Oxford 250 for the FTF Grand National Series, presented by Splash and Go Graphics, will be broadcasted live on Podium Esports next week. So you be sure to tune into that. I'm sure you'll see plenty of familiar faces on the call for that one next week, and what should be a pretty entertaining 250-lap dash, especially for cars, Justin, that you typically don't see at Oxford Plains. This track famous for its modifieds, its late models that run around here. Obviously, it ran a couple of NASCAR Busch Series and NASCAR Cup Series races way back in the day, but at least in recent history, has not been known to host these large stock cars that take place here, and it makes for some really interesting racing, much like we saw Seth the Merchant doing that first race. A lot of off-throttle time. These things don't go fast around here. You're loose on exit. It just makes it a very entertaining show for the race fans.
It can be very difficult, absolutely, but you have to remember, a lot of that racing is in the help for of someone, of course, named Bob Bear, who unfortunately passed away just a couple days ago. He was a big part, mind you, of building the short track scene, especially for the late models, with this racetrack, which he owned at one point, mind you. One of the stories I heard from Dave Moody was a great point, too, where they had something called the Open Series, Blake, where it would essentially open up the rulebook around various different types of cars to compete against one another at this racetrack. Some of them included NASCAR drivers, mind you, who brought their, say, Grand National cars, or at the time, the Winston North Series cars, and see how they duke it out against, say, the locals and the late models. It kind of built up that short track scene for New England, especially the northern part of the region. So this is a track with a lot of history, Blake. And this is going to be a tough one, absolutely, for these Xfinity machines to wheel their way around the racetrack, especially to try and do so without contact. I believe we're just about ready, though, for the heat.
It is. This is a racetrack that has, for the better part of the last century, been dominated by natives of the Pine Tree State. Since 1996, the Oxford 250 has only been won by 6 drivers outside of the state of Maine as their origin. As we'll take a look at the starting lineup for our second heat, same format as what we just had for you a couple minutes ago. Top 4 advanced. Derek Justice, no shocker there to see the Baskin-Robbins Toyota take it to the top of the board. A 15.162 is quick time in heat number 2. It'll be Shane Thurane, who is starting on the outside of row number 1. Jake Poulin will bring up the inside of row number 2 with Gary Waterworth to his outside. Michael Frisch will roll off in 5th. Dylan Smith in 6th. Evan Rice, 15.4 on the board, will roll off from 7th. Keith Sherman in 8th. Jeffrey Stanton in 9th. And Noah Carmichael did not pull a qualifying time. That'll round out this 10-car heat. And again, 20 laps. And again, something that we didn't see in that last heat that we'll have to remind you about as well. Only green flag laps will count towards the total here. So if we get a caution flag, we'll pause it right there. Laps will not count after that. And I think that's going to come into play later tonight, Justin. I don't think that we're going to see an entire night here full of heats, consolation races, a last chance qualifier, all that. We're going to have to get some yellow flags out here at some point.
I'm expecting some craziness even on the jump here, with how much bumping and banging we've seen, especially by corner apex. We'll have to see how patient some of these guys are here. I believe they're about to take the green, Blake.
And Shane Thorane next to Derek Justice, who gets a mega launch. Call it about 2 or 3 car links that he's already up, and now Jake Poulin able to take advantage. Thorane there, start of the front row, and is now running to exactly what Kevin McAdams saw. Lap 1, he's running second all the way back to 5th outside of the transfer as they complete lap number 1.
Looks like he finally found some hold though in front of one of the Rogue Energy machines. Yes, indeed, to go back to P5. Thing is, though, can the Dankfish hold on? Remember, when it comes to podium action, he was the man who came away with the checkered flag in the first in Flight 400. He's flying down to the bottom side to try and take away P3 from Gary Waterworth.
You also remember his dominance in E-Truck Series 9 in America, went up and passed Zach Novak when they were running some trucks at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Was in the Final Four for the Verizon Cup Series Championship last season that was eventually won by Brian Mercurio. Definitely a lot of speed for that Bar Visuals Toyota as he goes up into position number 3. Thorane back on the bottom side. He'll make his way by Gary Waterworth, looking to hang on as he gets bounced out of the transfer spot. Directly behind him, Dylan Smith, a driver who is definitely more familiar with running NASCAR Racing 2003 season here at FTF. Won a couple of races just a few years ago in the Verizon Cup Series. He runs in 6th and more than capable, then going up there running in the 4th spot.
Yeah, his pace looking decent already, taking away P5. Good run on the bottom side. Side by side for 5th. Waterworth pushing up the racetrack. Stanton now follows on through to take away P6. Contact. Up the racetrack goes Waterloo out of the groove, and Evan Rice takes advantage and gives him the door to boot. And Waterworth all of a sudden goes from P5 to P8 in the span of 2 sets of corners, Blake.
Well, and now you see a pretty vicious battle up here. Michael Frisch gets moved out of the way by Shane. Frisch now gets bumped back to 4th, and that brings Dylan Smith, another one of that Bar Visuals group, right to the back bumper of Michael Frisch. As now Thorane will get into the curb, and that is a vicious curb here, Justin. You think about how low you want to run at this racetrack and how much speed you can carry down there. That curb is more violent on these Xfinity cars than what you would typically see if you were running a street stock here or so. So if you hit that curb, good luck. You're going to be paying for that for the next couple of corners if you do that. But right now, Thorane will sort himself out. We got a battle for that transfer, though, between Frisch and Smith.
Still holding on for the time being as contact Smith. He bobbles up the racetrack. Stanton tries to buoy him along. Rice tries to buoy Stanton. The 94 up the track. Rice nearly hits the left corner panel on the 94. Back single file, and just like that, what was about a 4-car battle for the bubble spot down to just 2 cars. Dylan Smith continues to fight. He's had an iRacing account since all the way back since prior to 2011. He's looking to put that IR account into the show. He makes the move to the bottom side for the bubble spot.
Oh, and contact made between Frisch and Smith. Is now Frisch going to let him by? Went for the crossover, but now here comes Jeffrey Stanton. Oh, and Frisch will shut the door as they head into 1. Frisch up the racetrack. Here comes Stanton in the bottom side, and now Evan Rice looking to get in this mix as well as Frisch will cut him off. Rice hits the curb. You can throw 5 cars under a blanket here as Dylan Smith, now in that coveted transfer spot, now has to try and run away from the 94 of Jeffrey Stanton. 7 laps remaining in this heat. It's relatively calm up front. Derek Justice has led every lap. Poulin has been in 2nd, and now Thorane comfortably in 3rd. But it is going to get nasty for this transfer spot. Jeffrey Stanton within a car length of Dylan Smith.
Pushing real tight as Smith. He pushed a lot in 3 and 4, really having to back up the corner. He's got a fair bit of damage all over the race car and just about every single side of his Toyota Supra. Long shot coming from behind. Stanton nearly gets the back bumper in the big Eagle Design Chevrolet. 4 laps to go this time, however. I don't know if Smith can hold on here, Blake, all while Justice is waving goodbye from his back mirror.
Oh, he certainly is, but Stanton looking to rocket back here for that transfer spot. He got a little bit wide here on the front straightaway, which is not only not where you want to run, there's a bit of reverse banking there that'll travel you the opposite way. So Stanton trying to recover with that. 3 laps to go as they're 3 wide back in the pack outside the transfer spot. You talk about you want to start as high up as you can in the consolation races. They're still battling for position back here. They're side by side between Rice and Frisch as they now cross the stripe. 2 to go. Just Stanton have one last gasp at Dylan Smith.
Smith trying to hold on as the white flag is up in the air for Derek Justice. He's ran away by 1.2 seconds. Chantarian holding on to third spot. Dylan Smith, though. Can he hold on, or will Smith try and set it hard into 3 and 4? The Chevrolet Camaro from behind, not close enough to leap in, Blake.
No, he's not. It's going to be Justice easily who takes the checkered flag. Dylan Smith all the way back from the 6th position outside of row number 3 will race his way forward. Did a little bumping and banging to make it happen, but he finishes up in 4th, and he'll move along with Shane Thorane, who started outside of row number 1, Jake Poulin, and Derek Justice. It'll be Jeffrey Stanton who rolls off from that coveted first starting position in that first consolation race. Keith Sherman in 6th, Evan Rice in 7th, and Michael Frisch, how strong he looked early on in this race, gets shuffled all the way back to 8th. Waterworth started in that transfer spot all the way back to the 9th position, and Noah Carmichael, not a factor in this one, finishes and starts in the 10th position. So that's the 10-car heat for heat number 2. Justice, Poulin, Thorane, and Smith will move on. And once again, we got to do a little bit of hopping here as we'll move on to heat number 3. But I think, Justin, what I was surprised by is how some of our strong qualifiers there in Frisch and Waterworth, it wasn't necessarily because of losing track position. They just got used up a little bit and just lost speed after a couple of laps.
Yeah, it almost looked like, again, when they got bumped out of the groove, that with them sliding around burned up some of the tires, because it's talked about by some drivers. You slide the tires even once or twice in a run, you have half a lap, maybe a lap to try and cool them down, and then you lose the tires for the rest of the run. It almost looked like once they got shuffled around a bit too much, and especially got stuck on the top line for a couple laps, that overheated the tires, and it just took that long for them to try and cool down. By the time they did, they already were about a couple seconds back or a few spots down the running order. That's just the difficulty of trying to hold on. Make sure you can also hang on in a bump and run scenario, as we've seen plenty of times tonight, and go from there.
Yeah, it's something that you definitely have to prepare for at this racetrack as we'll move on into heat number 3. And we were talking a little bit earlier about the strength in this field amongst all of these drivers that are trying to qualify their way into next week's Oxford 250. You mentioned a couple of big names that are coming up in heat number 3 to try to compete in this one. Blake Reynolds, an NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series driver. You see the same in Chris Overland, Kane Cook, Brandon Cattell. So I think we have to say this, Justin. This is probably the strongest out of our 4 heats that we're going to see. This is going to be, I guess, what you would term the heat of death. If we were going to talk about group of death, you often hear that in international football competition. But move over to this heat. You have a lot of heavy hitters in this one.
Yeah, let me put it this way. Justin Malillo, a very noteworthy iRacing reporter who reports on the various different series, basically said meet, so to speak, after the driver's meeting when he's seen, oh, hey, I've got Overland, Cook, and Reynolds in the field. Chris Overland's message to the drivers? Bugs. Not sure what that means, but he's currently one of the quickest drivers on the racetrack. I think this is going to be, though, not going to be easy even for them, because there's drivers who are very talented as well in this field. Cosmin Ioshino, we've seen some good speed for him in the past. I think we're going to see some good pace as well. Don't forget about Cattell to try and bump in. It's not just going to be, I think, Coke driver, Coke driver, Coke driver. It's going to be one where you see at least 1 or 2 of the big names have to go through the next round of advancement.
And I think you're right when you think about everybody being this strong. We actually have 30 seconds left in qualifying, a name we didn't even bring up, but he's been awfully strong in the years that if you've been a part or a participant in the NR 2003 Cup Series, Chris Wetz has taken the quick time at least if we have 10 seconds left, I believe he's going to be able to hold on to it. So Chris Wetz, amongst those four that we weren't even talking about being a part of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, gonna lead the field to green here as qualifying wraps up its 5-minute time. And he's going to start on the front row. Chris Overland to his outside, Kane Cook, Arnold Columbia, another FTF regular amongst the top four. Blake Reynolds, shuffle him back to fifth. Justin Malillo inside of row number three, or outside of row number three, rather, in sixth. Brandon Kittel in seventh, way off the pace in qualifying, nearly a second and a half behind Chris Wex. Rich Jameson, the final qualifier in this one. You have Cosmin Ioneshu, Ethan Murkey, and Craig Hawkins, who will round out this 11-car field. Jake pulling in here for purposes of administration. So a very, very competitive heat. And, this is a bit different, Justin. Not points on the line tonight. Obviously, you're able to come out here to Oxford Plains and lean on each other and just have fun in a private racing league. And I don't think that's lost on these guys. I think they're going to use each other up just a little bit because they have the opportunity here to do so without necessarily all of the repercussions that come with that.
Honestly, based on some of these drivers in this field, if they could go 7 wide, I think they would try it. It's not realistic, but those are the types of drivers who may be fighting in this event. Unfortunate thing, though, is Chris and Wentz in the 71 technical issue will miss the start. Wow.
You hate to see it for Chris Wentz. Came out here and was quick time on the board, was doing a lot of testing earlier in the night in practice, and wanted to make sure that he was in this event, and obviously put down a heck of a lap. Believe was actually faster than what we saw. I believe it was a 1.68 out of Derek Justice in the last heat. Chris Wentz throws down a 1.66, and unfortunately connection issues for the driver of the 71. He will be trying to connect back into the server, but not before we're going to take the green flag in this one. So it actually ends up working out for Kane Cook, who's going to restart on the inside of road number 1. Believe control of this restart will go to Chris Overland, was technically on the outside of road number 1 to start this thing. But Kane Cook has that preferred line on the bottom side, and he will get the catbird seat on this restart. As there you see Overland will get the launch, and Cook is on the inside. We're green flag racing. 3 of the top contenders are all in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Columbia now in control of that 4th spot, but he'll get a shove and is off the racetrack. Brandon Kittel, move him aside. He moves up into the 4th spot. Columbia's off the racetrack.
Well, just like that, I'm proving wrong as all 4 of the Coke drivers inside the top 4, especially with the bad luck for Wentz. Now it's the question of, can he run away? Malillo was trying to hold on to P5. Cosmin Ioneshu, very quick driver, very good graphic designer from Nexus Esports. All with the back bumper of the 53, can't make a move as the Coke drivers all line astern.
Well, and I think you have to keep an eye on Justin. Aside from that battle for the 6th position, that Arnold Columbia slowing up just a little bit, you have to think, what if retaliation is on his mind? Is now the slow car going to go to the inside line? The leaders will have to check their way up. He almost gets into Reynolds. What's Columbia going to do here with Kittel?
Oh!
I don't think we were surprised by that. Caution flag is out, and Kittel is in it, and there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about that. That is short track racing and tempers flaring, and Arnold Columbia takes out Brandon Kittel.
Kittel already apologizing over the radio, but man. Apparently, Columbia had to let some of his feelings out, but this could make it fun now, because now Kittel has to come from the back. Cosmin Ioneshu is now in the bubble spot, just like that, and we have our first caution in the heat races tonight.
Well, and I think when we were talking about things earlier, you have to be careful about how you pass people here, and certainly so they take a pretty laissez-faire Obviously, you see Columbia still out on the racetrack. I think that was just if you're going to punt me off the racetrack, I'm going to get you back. Don't think there will be anything more in mind for Columbia. Kittel, I believe, is still on the lead lap, but he's going to have to come all the way from the back of the pack, try to repair as much damage as possible, and actually scratch that. He is still on pit road, going to go a lap down, so Kittel going to have to wait a little bit to try and ride this thing out and try to qualify through the consies that are taking place later on tonight.
Actually, this is the interesting thing. Remember, caution laps don't count. It's one of the first times I have seen this. Meanwhile, this is called having fun. Kane Cook saying, I'm saving fuel. Overland saying, okay, I'll push you.
Fuel saving here, not something you thought you'd see. I think those guys are just kind of joking around here at the front of the field amongst themselves, but again, going to make it interesting to see. Again, timing and scoring is not going to update until we get back to the green flag. Yellow flag laps do not count, so we'll continue to pace under the caution flag for the time being. Right now, unofficially, it is Kane Cook, followed by Chris Overland, Blake Reynolds, Cosmin Yanishu, Justin Malillo, and Rich Jamison, your top 6. Ethan Murkey and Craig Hawkins round out the 8 cars that are on the racetrack. Chris Wett's back in the server, but is scored several laps down. We'll see the procedure, and if they try to get him back on the lead lap, score him a couple of laps. And then, of course, Arnold Columbia and Brandon Kittel. Heavy damage on those machines. We'll have to see what happens with those drivers. It'll be Kane Cook once again. He gets control of the restart and off to a big jump as Chris Overland spins the tires, struggles with that one. He gets to the bottom side, and Yanishu is up and over.
Cosman way off the racetrack. Should note that Kittel did get to stay on the lead lap. It's like what we see at short tracks, where if you do have to get repairs, you can maintain a lap, and Cosman brings the caution.
And Yanishu going to bring out the caution flag as he was trying to get back onto the racing surface, and we were talking about those curbs that came into play a little bit earlier on in the night, and it certainly made a difference there. I believe it was the 53 machine of Justin Malillo, his Team Mobile Ford Mustang. Track, but no, well, a little bit of an issue there. Speed Incorporated teammates tangle here in turns 1 and 2.
And you said it yourself. If you hit those curves, it's very bad. And he ended up hitting the left front, digging the splitter, launched it back up in the air. And as expected, if you hit that, you're pushing up half a lane. The problem is, Cosman was up to the outside. Nowhere for him to go as he spun around and loses all the track position. On the bright side for Kittel, we talked about how many short tracks who do not count caution flag laps allow drivers to get repairs and stay on the lead lap if they can get to the green flag. Kittel's taken this opportunity to get this all repaired. If it was in another situation where you didn't have that happen, he would either be several laps down, or have to come in every 10 seconds, coming in and out after 10 seconds each.
I was about to say that was a correction that I had to issue a little bit there earlier. Is Kittel sitting and getting repairs because, like you mentioned, these caution laps don't count. He's able to sit there, repair, obviously more than if he was having to try and focus and stay on the lead lap. He's able to repair a significant amount of damage there and not lose any laps. Obviously, Arnold Columbia has the same opportunity to do so as well, although I believe this time he'll be given the free pass to get back onto the lead lap. So we'll reset the order for you. Kane Cook, Blake Reynolds, Chris Overland, 3 of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series competitors running in the top 3 into a transfer spot for later on tonight. And how about this, Justin? Justin Malillo up in the 4th spot after that contact. It doesn't work out for Cosman, but Malillo started in 6th and has found his way into a I guess you want to call it a preferred spot up there in the top 4, but unfortunately for him, as the lights go off atop the iRacing pace car, he's going to be on the outside of row number 2, so he'll have to try and get down to the bottom before Ethan Murkey, who started caboose on this field, is running in the 5th spot. He'll look to race his way forward. Bad restart for the driver of the 11, though. Kane Cook gets a great launch. Malillo will be able to get to the bottom side, I believe, side by side with he and Chris Overland. Melillo goes to the bottom, and they're side by side behind them between Rich Jameson and the number 11 of Ethan Murkey.
Still side by side indeed. They're slowing each other up. Melillo trying to hold on to the race car. 12 laps to go this time. Melillo has talked about on social media that he was hoping some of the speed would translate over in this series to iRacing compared to how it's been with many different victories in NR 2003. He's now running away from this grouping. It's still side by side. Jameson still hard on the top side of the Turn 4 Motorsports machine. Murkey in the FedEx machine finally pushes him out of the groove.
And I was about to say, Jameson, a valiant effort trying to hang on the high side, but just got a little bit too far out of the groove, and now he's going to even see Arnold Columbia go on by. Of course, Columbia actually still scored 1 lap down in the 10th position. He's trying to do it the old-fashioned way. So we'll cross halfway that last time by. Again, only green flag laps count, so we're only on lap 12. 9 laps to go as we cross it this time by. It is still Cook and Reynolds at the front of the field as they start to separate, as well as Chris Overland. But like you said, Prince, Justin Melillo driving away from Ethan Murkey there in that 4th spot.
And I think if Melillo advances right to the main event, right from the heats, we're going to see at least 24 pictures of that beautiful pink machine. He's running away right now by 0.2 a lap. In really good shape, especially with Columbia holding up the battle for about 5th on back.
Yeah, he certainly is doing that job as Columbia, again, right front fender damage, fresher tires. It has worked out. So now Melillo with a bit of a buffer behind him. It's going to take perhaps a yellow flag either in the back of the field or these front 3 to mix it up amongst themselves for something to happen. They'll cross the stripe this time. It'll be 5 laps to go for Kane Cook, who, as we mentioned, was going to start in 3rd in this heat, but after the connection issues from Chris Wetz, who was our initial pole sitter, trouble befell him. He falls out of the server, and that allows Cook to go to the top of the board. Change for the 2nd position as Chris Overland and Blake Reynolds run amongst each other. Reynolds surrendered that spot to Chris Overland, and so Overland moves into 2nd, Reynolds in 3rd. Melillo still hanging on to 4th, about a second, call it about 2 seconds now, over Rich Jameson, who has now made his way by into 5th.
Looking in a decent starting position for the Consies, but surprisingly, Cattell has just not been able to go. He has been letting cars go. He's the slowest car on the racetrack, in fact. I think Cattell is done, but I don't think this fight for 5th is quite yet over if Murkey can get a decent run, especially with Jameson cooking the corner just like that.
Yeah, certainly so. Jameson on the high side as they'll approach the white flag this time by. 1 lap to go. Jameson all out of the groove again. This is for the top spot, or at least as far forward as you can go in the consolation race. Is Murkey able to make his way by off of turn number 4? Checkered flag in hand. It'll be Kane Cook who wins. Overland in 2nd. Reynolds and Melillo will move on, but the battle for 5th here. Little contact. They touch doors, and at the stripe, give it to Jameson, a little bit of short track racing that Denny Hamlin would be proud of. And over the radio, you hear the jubilation out of the 53 team. They are in to the Oxford 250. They'll be in the trophy dash tonight. And I believe all of Twitter going to be doing that as Melillo is going to burn it down here on the front straightaway. P4 from Melillo, good enough to light up the rear tires.
What a drive for Melillo to hold on to the bubble spot. What a drive indeed. But Kane Cook, Chris Overland, Blake Reynolds, we expected those drivers to try and move on in this race. But Rich Jameson, great job to try and get P5 back at the checker flag with Murkey. Bad luck, though, for Cosmini and Shun, who had some good speed before getting turned around. Hawkins in P8. Cattell with that damage has to go through the LCQs. Columbia, and bad luck for Chris Wetz with that technical issue. Rounds out the top 11, Blake.
Every man on every crew tipping their cap to the driver of the 53, who ends up getting his way in. Of course, Cook takes down the win, and we'll continue to move on forward. Just one more heat set to go for you tonight. A couple of big names in that one, so of course you won't want to miss that. And I believe actually we'll have to wait a couple of minutes for this server to go on up as we look to do a little bit more server hopping here in this one. We'll continue to move on forward with heat number 4. We're going to have some big names in that one. Michael Cozy Jr., David Schildhouse, just to name a few, and of course Donovan Strauss. So you won't want to miss that one. It's going to be a pretty nice ending to this night. 11 drivers ready and set to go in that one in just a little bit. But again, big moves in that one, and I think every single driver is pretty happy to see that one, the 53, end up in the show.
Yeah, several of the drivers was looking towards the left side of my monitors to keep an eye on how fans are reacting. They are overjoyed. Several drivers are calling it one of the upsets of the season so far. A great job by Malou, to say the very least, to hold on and pull away to be able to get himself into the show without having to go to the LCQs. As we talked about, he thought he was going to have to drive through those immediately the second he's seen some of his competitors. Instead, he was able to get some luck and then use his pace on that long run once some of the tires started to settle in for the drivers behind to run away.
And he was able to do just that. So we'll look forward to heat number 4 as we are on the last of our 4 20-lap heats to take place tonight. Of course, you see on your screen the consolations coming up in just a little bit. Those will be 25 laps each and will, of course, be made up of the drivers who weren't able to successfully qualify their way in by finishing in the top 4 of these 20-lap segments to start this race. And we're actually going to catch up with the driver of the 53 here in just a moment if we can find a way to catch him as he climbs out of his race car. The T-Mobile Mustang is in the show. Justin, how about it?
Yeah. Can you believe that?
I don't think anybody can, Justin. A great drive there. Started in P6, so you did yourself some favors in qualifying, but you had some issues up in front of you, a little bit of drama and implications. Of course, no shortage of that here at FTF, but you're able to drive up there and get it done.
Never at FTF. We always bring the drama. We always bring the implications. And I really want to thank Arnold Columbia for being really pissed off at Brandon. I could tell there. They got into it on real early, and he managed to open the door for me. And me and Cosman, we were fighting for that last spot there before the last caution. And I feel bad because I hit the curb and went up, but. I mean, I told him, and he kind of agreed with me. There was, we were just fighting for the same spot there, and you know what? I'm in the show, and I don't have to fall back on, probably starting 45th next week.
I was about to say, now you move on in the show, 250 laps going to take place in that one. What's going to be the main difference you're looking forward to as a driver? You get these 20-lap heats out of the way, but 250 laps at Oxford Plains is something that I don't think even the most skilled and talented drivers out there kind of wince when you see that. 250 laps at Oxford Plains. That makes my arm sore just thinking about it.
Yeah, I can't wait to melt my right front tire all 250 laps next week. Although we are going to be getting, I believe, 2 sets of tires for next week, so at least I'll have that to fall back on. So it's going to be different. I've run these Oxford races on NR a couple of times with Jake, and it's a tough one because you're always turning left. You're never in the gas fully, and I don't know, maybe that plays to my strengths. Maybe that's why I was able to be in the position I was in tonight.
Show, so, but we'll hand you the mic one more time, Justin. Shout out to anybody out there who's obviously very happy with you right now.
Shout out to everybody who's watching. Thank you for supporting FTF. You guys at STN for putting on this broadcast tonight. Just great to be a part of it. Thank you guys.
That's the driver of the 53. You can catch him in not only the Trophy Dash tonight, but in the Oxford 250 next week, live on Podium Esports. So we'll take place in that next week. Justin, good luck tonight in the Trophy Dash, and obviously we bid our well wishes for next week as well.
Thank you.
And as we move on here to our final heat of the night, about to wrap up qualifying here in just about 20 seconds, it appears as though Evan Brinker is going to be the quick time. And I think one of the quickest times we saw in qualifying in this entire segment, a 1:63 for the driver of the 21, Ryan Williams. Looks as if he's going to start to his outside. Michael Cozy in third, Naraki in fourth. And again, like we said in this one, a couple of big names, whether they may not be the most competitive drivers in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series like we had last heat, you have a lot of big followings out here from several of these drivers that are involved in this heat. As you take a look, there's the full starting grid. Brinker and Williams on row 1, Cozy and Naraki row 2, Schildhaus and Hagenstein on row 3. Road number 4 will be the 63, as well as 18 of Kyle Short, Andrew Schwartz, and Donovan Strauss, who did not pull a qualifying time. He'll bring up the back of the field on the outside of row number 5. But Justin, you do have a lot on the line here. Obviously, it's top 4 in the heat. Regardless of who's in it with you, you're trying to get to the front. And I think there's a lot of folks watching this heat, rooting on their favorite drivers.
Absolutely, and keep in mind some of the top drivers. We mentioned Schildhaus. We mentioned Strauss, affiliated with some of those eNASCAR teams, essentially part of their development programs as well as their streaming programs, in the case of Vernon Kligerman Esports. So the following has been big enough not just to have a following, but gain the attention of some of the biggest teams in all of iRacing to show what they can do on the racetrack.
Certainly. So we want to take this time to remind you that the FTF Grand National Series is brought to you by Splash and Go Graphics. Obviously, you can reach them out on different social media outlets on Facebook.com/Splash and Go Graphics. You get to see what the entire team, including Cosmin and the rest of the game, Nick Baker, they do a fantastic job of painting up these iRacing liveries. And I don't think there's any better advertisement for Splash and Go Graphics than looking at the beautiful paint scheme that you see on the number 20 machine, as well as many of the other paint schemes out here this evening. So the FTF Grand National Series presented by Splash and Go Graphics. Of course, you can visit them on Facebook or reach out and get a quote today. And of course, also for many of the drivers out here in this field, you mention any driver on Outrun Esports as a promo code, you'll get $5 off your first paint scheme with them. So make sure to check them out on Facebook and your various other social media outlets. But we'll finally get rolling here as we look forward to our final of our 20-lap heats here tonight. Brinker, Williams, Cozy, and Naraki, as we just mentioned, will be the drivers that we'll have to keep our eyes on here in the top 4. And, of course, David Schildhaus outside the transfer spot, but is starting in a very favorable position up there in position number 5, third on the inside row.
I'll also keep an eye on Donovan Strauss from the very back. Wouldn't be surprised to see him back off and immediately go to the bottom side behind the 67. Several of these drivers are going to be very hungry. I think that's going to be very competitive, especially with the potential craziness, because seen a lot of craziness, let's put it that way, with that 99 machine in the second row on the inside line. Expecting a little bit of craziness for him to try and hold on to a top 4 spot.
We'll see if he's able to do just that. 80 laps of heats, the last 20 set to go for you as the Oreo Chevrolet of Evan Brinker gets us going here. And Michael Cozy, one car's around, it's the 0-2, caution flag is out. Ryan Naraki is involved, as well as David Schildhaus, on a big incident that happens here on the front straightaway. I believe it was twins in terms of the 20 and the 0-2 who end up linking here on the front straightaway after it looked like a little bit of a slide on the run a lap yet.
Yeah, and I think it's just as simple as Naraki tried to clear himself. Didn't get a good jump. Immediately just tried to get to the bottom side, and Schildhaus wasn't having any of it. The downside is Schildhaus is now crushing the front nose a bit now, with that going right across his front nose and pushing him along in the entire 1 and 2, so that may hamper that car a little bit.
And certainly will. And of course, the lost track position for Schoenhaus not going to go too well for him either. Although
he actually gained the spot.
Yeah, I was about to say, thought that he may have been involved in that, but he's actually going to be scored unofficially in the 4th position when we get on this restart. So he'll be on the outside of row number 2. I'm sure not where he wants to be, but of course much further forward than Ryan Naraki, who gets the bad end of that and goes to the back of the field. But like you said, heavy damage on the nose of that Toyota Supra. It's going to make it a handful to hang on, as well as he has some rear damage on his machine as well. But that was mainly a product, Justin. It looked like Naraki had a little bit of issue on the launch of that restart, and that's just a product of the fact that, you know, you're all, like you said, you're always turning here at Oxford Plains. There's really never a moment where you can hold that steering wheel straight before you have to turn it again. Restarted in the corners and just got a little bit loose on the restart, trying to fire off with these cold tires. And, you know, Schildhaus on the bottom side, he's going to try to take advantage of it because of how powerful that inside lane is. So almost can't blame Schildhaus for that after trying to get by the slower car in Naraki. So we'll reset the field here for you. It's going to be Evan Brinker, Ryan Williams, Michael Cozy, and David Schildhaus who make up your top 4. Now it'll be Ryan Pandesio. Hope I totally didn't just butcher that. Pandesio is what we'll go with, as he'll start in 5th. And another tire spin, this time from the second runner in Ryan Williams, as they make contact on the front straightaway. Williams gets bumped to the outside. Now Schildhaus looking to pounce for Hurd. They're 3 wide behind them. Donovan Strauss to the inside.
What did I say? Donovan Strauss messed up his qualifying. Had 2 incident points on the 1 lap he had to set. He's already digging to try and move one of his fellow stream mates. Pushes him forward. Schildhaus now looking to take away P3. Strauss looking to try and take advantage and take away P4. The JDR graphics machine now side by side for the bubble spot as Ryan Williams falls back to P5 out of turn 2.
And Ryan Williams will get cleared by Donovan Strauss as Strauss sets his sights forward on his Burton Kligerman Esports teammate of David Schildhaus. Strauss looking awfully strong in that Toyota, and I think Schildhaus is going to look to let him by. Oh, but a back bumper given to Donovan Strauss. Schildhaus gets moved up the racetrack, and now here comes Ryan Williams side by side for the transfer spot. Nearly contact between the 2 drivers as they work it into one. Williams the preferred line. Schildhaus with the crossover looking to get down low. Give it to Williams, but as they head into 3, the 28 will hang on.
Temperatures starting to flare a little bit, obviously, in this final heat already. Schildhaus, he's being very patient again, has to check him with the corner entry. 3rd straight corner entry. He's backed up the corner to make sure he didn't run into the back of the Williams. How long does it keep it happening, though? This time, wheel spin. Strauss gets moved. He spun around. Williams goes around to the bottom. Strauss spins around. Caution flag is out, and there goes all the track position for the 51. Williams still spinning in 1 and 2.
And a very lucky break for a couple of drivers who were looking to almost lose this top 4 as Ryan Williams rolling through the center of 3 and 4 makes a little bit of contact with Donovan Strauss. We saw Strauss It's just a simple product of short track racing right there. Williams carrying more momentum through the center of the corner, carries it into Strauss, and we've seen these guys be able to bump each other a little bit, but Williams got in there just too hot, and Strauss, obviously talented enough to save it, just got hit too hard to try and correct his Toyota Supra.
And we're hearing over the radio, too, that Strauss was actually plowing there. So he was trying to back up the apex there to make sure he can get a good corner-off exit. The thing is, I don't think Williams was expecting to slow down that much. That's why everything just happened so quickly there, with them sliding down to the inside, down the front straightaway. So now the thing is, Strauss has those tires heated up now. So we'll have to see how his car is going to handle. I don't know how he's going to do here with just about 12 laps to work with.
Well, the one nice thing about heating up those rear tires after he spun around is that it's certainly going to help that car turn better. Now, whether it's too much, obviously that's left to be seen. But it's going to help that car JDRgraphics.com Toyota turn just a little bit better through the center as we continue to move on forward. It's still Brinker out front. Michael Cozy has moved up into the second position. He'll be on the outside of row number 1, and Brinker has gotten some amazing launches on these restarts, and the rest of these competitors struggling to keep up. We've seen a couple of tire spins, one from Ryan Naraki, then from Ryan Williams. So we'll have to see if these top 2 or 3 can try and sort it out again. Naraki back in the transfer spot. Williams started in second now on the outside, looking in, trying to transfer into the trophy dash. So lights will go up atop the iRacing.com Mustang pace car. Brinker, Cozy, Schildhouse, and Naraki is how they run. Williams and Short looking to capitalize directly behind them. 13 laps to go. Again, caution flags not counting here as we send under the yellow flag. We'll have 13 to go as Brinker will approach the stripe. He'll get us going once again. Major tire spin out of David Schildhouse, who stacks them up all behind them. Contact made behind them. Cozy able to get down for second. They're now side by side for fourth between Ryan Williams and Ryan Naraki.
Good run. Williams turns it into an awful apex. Still able to clear on by for fourth position cleanly. Naraki tries to go back towards the back bumper for fourth spot. Donovan Strauss still bullies his way back up to P5. Again, Strauss pushing on forward as one car set sliding. Holding on to it, that was Hagenstein at the back of the field.
And right now, Strauss, a power move. He's able to make up 2 spots on that lap, and he has his sights set on Ryan Williams, but he's got a mirror full of the T-Mobile Mustang who makes a little bit of contact with them. Strauss just getting absolutely used up. He's able to hang on to it. Naraki dives it in deep. Once again, Strauss will have to give it to him. Naraki goes in, overruns the corner, and will door Donovan Strauss. Strauss able to keep holding on, but it is allowing those top 4, Justin Prince, to continue to pull away.
And that's exactly what we've seen from Donovan Strauss before. He is struggling in apex with tightness. That's killing him and everybody else. That's why everyone's just stacking up. Everyone's starting to push him again. Second time now this race that Strauss is pushed up and out of the bottom groove. He loses a spot as a result. This time, he tries to wedge himself back down. And Desio already down to the bottom side to try and take away P6.
Yeah, Donovan Strauss getting used up, and Naraki not making friends out here, which for anybody familiar with the FTF Racing League, it's pretty much par for the course, especially here at a track like Oxford Plains. Change for the third position. David Schildhouse will surrender that spot to Ryan Williams as Williams moves up into third, but battle for the lead starting to brew up front. Michael Cozy all over the back bumper of the Oreo Chevrolet. A pair of Camaros duking it out here, and Cozy looking to the bottom side, nearly has a nose on him.
What can I say? Cozy is hungry to try and take home a victory in a heat race. Brinker giving him the space. Cozy Jr. to the bottom side. Winvow drives to the bottom side. Cozy takes the lead. 3 laps to go. The Indy Racing Images machine looks to run away with a heat race victory.
And Michael Cozy, as his fan section gets up and cheers for this driver, makes his way by despite some of the damage, has marched his way forward from third all the way up to first. Brinker will settle in second as they approach 2 laps to go. Is there enough for anybody to try and run down David Schildhouse? Right now it's Ryan Naraki running behind the driver of the 20, who has got about a second to work with as Naraki will hit one of the curbs in 3 and 4. White flag in the air. One more trip around for Michael Cozy in this top 4 that you'd have to think, Justin, are in good shape as long as they can get through one more set of corners. Off of 4, it's going to be the 99 of Michael Cozy who takes down the win. In second is going to be Brinker. Third is Williams. And the final transfer into the night is going to be the number 20 of David Schildhouse. Naraki brings it home 5th. Ryan Pandesio in 6th. Hagenstein in 7th. Kyle Short in 8th. Andrew Schwartz in 9th. And I think Donovan Strauss, just after getting used up enough, he'll finish up in the 10th position, 2 laps down. So field of 16 now set for tonight's trophy dash, but not before we have some consolation races, 25 laps each, to set the remaining field for the Oxford 250 taking place next week. So 2 more 25-lap bouts coming at you next, as we'll have to, again, sort things out here as we set the lineups, get everything all squared away, get servers taken down and reset back up. But again, a lot of drivers who showed some speed, involved in some accidents, that are looking to try to waste their way into the Oxford 250 next week, Justin, which, again, lots of money, lots of prizes on the line. So these guys hungry to have another crack at it.
Yeah, this is going to, I think, be fairly crazy. 25 laps, so extra laps as you talked about, but only the top 5 advance. Here's the difficulty of that with 22 machines. There might not be any give or take in some cases with the chance to move on into the field. So I think it's going to be white knuckle time to try and hold on to spots, hold on to the bump and runs, make sure you don't spin around your race car, make sure that you hold on to the bottom side, and keep an eye on your mirror, because I think you're going to be very busy trying to make sure you line up your corner entry, don't get too tight, burn up the right front, and make sure you don't get spun around like a bottle top.
It's certainly going to be part of the equation here as we'll continue to move forward. We'll have to pause for just a brief moment as we get things squared away here, trying to set the field for tonight's Trophy Dash, as well as the Oxford 250 taking place next week on Podium Esports. We'll step aside for just a minute. Don't go away, and we'll be right back with consolation racing right up next. Back with you with live Flag the Flag coverage of tonight's Oxford 250 qualifiers, and we've been able to pull up one of the drivers who had a little bit of attrition in that last race, to say the least, and may not have looked pretty other than the paint scheme, but you certainly got the job done to qualify for tonight's Trophy Dash. So we've caught up with the driver number 20, Splash and Go Graphics Toyota, in David Schildhouse. And David, bit interesting that last race, some drama and implications. Of course, you can never avoid that when you come out to FTF, but good enough job to get in the show for tonight.
Yeah, that's short track racing. Two guys going for the same spot, and I understand Ryan doesn't like the outcome of the contact, but everyone's fighting to get to the bottom. It's a bottom dominant track, and if you're not already down there, you got to make a real assertive move. And there's just a big enough hole for him to try and fit it in there, but I wasn't really too interested in letting him do it. So there you go.
Certainly so. Well, you have 30 laps later on in tonight's Trophy Dash. You're bringing home fourth in the fourth heat, which means out of those 16 drivers, you'll be starting in the 16th position. So, any strategy or thoughts that you have for a race? Caution laps don't count, but 30 laps to get to the front, you're going to have to do it pretty quickly.
Yeah, track position is going to be key, but you're going to get sent by anybody in any position around here. So, I don't think there's a safe place to hide. If you're the leader, if you're 15th, if you're 30th, I don't really think it matters. It's all about who's behind you and how patient they're going to be if they feel like you're holding them up. So you better be the fastest thing in Oxford tonight. Otherwise, you're probably going to get sent around. That's just going to be the way it goes. I expect there to be some angry drivers after this one. Hell, I might be one of them, but that's why we're all here fighting for some fame, some glory, some money, 50 cents lead per lap. I hope I at least lead one, so they have to pay me 50 cents.
I was mentioning that earlier, but you mentioned drivers behind you. Guess there's no better spot to be starting off in the Trophy Dash for tonight with not a driver behind you.
Is that me? Is there nobody behind me since I was last in the last heat?
Yeah, exactly. You made the show, but you're
Perfect.
starting P16, so.
That's pretty fitting. I'm pretty garbage. This does not suit my driving style. I'm not very good here, so I guess I'll put the bulldozer on the front of the Toyota Supra and see how many people I can make mad. I'll treat it like NASCAR Heat. See how many angry tweets I can get.
There you go. Obviously, very familiar with NASCAR Heat. But David, I'll hand the mic to you one more time. Anybody want to give a shout out before we get our consolation races started here in just a moment?
Thanks, Blake. Big shout out to FTF as always for putting on fun events, creative stuff. Big shout out to you guys for carrying the broadcast and doing a great job to highlight the race in here. Big shout out to everybody on Twitch, twitch.tv/Schildhouse. Everyone over at Slip Angle Motorsports, Burton Kligerman Esports, Outrun Esports as well. Big thank you to everybody involved, and Splash Go Graphics for painting up this beautiful car as always. Couldn't do it with all the partners who make this thing happen, and hopefully we can go out and execute on pit road here. So that's it, man. Y'all enjoy, and I'll try to put on a show. If I'll promise you this, all right? You mark down my words. If I'm running like garbage, which I probably will, I'll jump one of these dirt mounds and make it real fun.
Well, at least that'll be quite a spectacle for us to witness. But we'll look forward to that Splash and Go Graphics Toyota coming home in one piece, albeit it may be a bent up piece. But good luck tonight, David, and obviously you made your way into the Oxford 250 as well. So if Oxford Plains wasn't enough for 1 week, you get 2 weeks of it.
Good. Can't wait to get my fill of Oxford. I haven't run this in years, and hopefully it's many more years before I do it again. Appreciate it, guys.
Well, there's David Schildhouse. And Justin, I think there's one theme that I get out of a driver in David Schildhouse who, you and I both know him. We've been around him for a while, whether it's in broadcasting or in racing or whatnot. And, David isn't a guy that lets his temper get the best of him all too often. But I think I noted a little bit of frustration out of Mr. Schildhouse right there. So, it's I think that's just what this track creates, that even for somebody that was able to get through all of it and fight his way in, obviously not all too pleased with the way things happened there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you heard that frustration. It was like what I thought. He did not want to lose that bottom. Right from lap one, turn one, for somebody that had a bad start and was trying almost, it seemed, to back up and hold up the rows right behind to make sure he got said bottom. So that's, I think, the type of racing we may see throughout the rest of the evening is there's going to be a lot of physicality. The amount of give and take is going to go down even a little bit more. It's going to be physical. It's going to be crazy. And these drivers are not afraid to let their emotions show almost, it looks like, a little bit. This could be very interesting, again, to see how some of the LCQs go when there's more cars, and there are some drivers looking to try and make sure that they get their cars to get back going. We were just moments away, though, from the consies.
And just moments away as, again, we continue to wait on the servers being put up. Of course, we're having to allow the administration here to directly set the lineup out of the heat, so they have to go in manually, put everybody in their respective positions that they're supposed to be in. And so we'll allow them to continue to sort that out as we look to move forward here for consolation number 1, which will be 25 laps. Obviously, you got another 25 lapper in Consi 2 that'll continue to round out the field for the Oxford 250, and then a last chance qualifier, 50 laps for the last opportunity. They'll take 6 from that last chance qualifier into the race next week. However, the main event, as far as tonight is concerned, is the Trophy Dash, and as we just mentioned, that field is already set. 16 drivers that were the top 4 in each of their respective heats. It's Brandon Hawkin, Derek Justice, Nate Stewart, and Seth the Merchant from Heat 1. Jake Poulin, Shane Thurine, Dylan Smith, Kane Cook, Chris Overland, Blake Reynolds, Justin Malillo, Michael Cozy, Evan Brinker, Ryan Williams, and David Schildhouse. Those will be the 16 drivers competing in the Trophy Dash tonight. That field is already set. We're just getting things tried and sorted out to get the starting lineup set for the next main event, 250 lap main event tomorrow night. So again, we continue to wait on the server to show up. It actually just did, so we'll be in there in just a couple of moments to get ready for this one. Also want to give a shout out to somebody who just subscribed to STN Racing. I want to give a shout out to Gary Waterworth. Of course, you can find him on Twitch right now at Gary the Snail _12. If you're interested in riding along board with him, he'll be in this first consolation race taking place tonight. He'll start in the 10th position. So if you want to watch it from the back of the field, and hopefully what for Gary will be a march up into the top few spots, which will hopefully be a top 5 spot to get into the race next week, you can go to Gary the Snail _12 on Twitch and ride along with Gary. So thank you, Gary, for the subscription, and we'll try to see if we can't load into this server here in just a couple of moments and get everything set for you.
And I think we're going to see some very quick pace, I think, from Mercurio, from Frisch, from McAdams. I think as long as they don't let their tempers get ahead of them and don't get bumped around, they may be potential locks here if they can keep the cars clean. Everyone else, I think this can go to anybody. Because Waterworth, I would have called him a snail. He was actually fairly quick when he wasn't getting bumped around. Keith was very quick before his tires fell off. Rice, he had a hard time gaining track position. Sherman was very bold and was actually gaining track position at the end of his heat race. I think at the very least, 2 of the spots in this consi are going to be wide open to see who can make them.
I think you're right, Justin, about that. The caliber of drivers in this consolation race isn't really short of what we've seen in a lot of these heats, but obviously the desperation is what's starting to creep up here. If you don't make the top 5 in this consolation race, you're going to have to move forward to the last chance qualifier. 50 laps in that one, and obviously if you can get your way in here, you'll be starting at least in the top 26 for the main event next week, all the way as high as 17th, depending on where you finish. So you don't want to have to go to that LCQ, because even if you do make the main show next week, you're going to have to make a heck of a march up from the back of the field to try and make your way up through 250 laps here at Oxford Plains, which, you know, with all the checkups, I'm sure that are going to come, and all the attrition, the drama, implications, everything that comes along with racing that, you're going to want all the track position. I think Shieldhouse painted the picture perfectly. Track position is going to be king here for really the rest of our events here at Oxford Plains. So you're going to want that, and I think these drivers are well aware of that as we continue to move forward.
And I think one of the things Malillo said especially, too, was 2 tire sets. Essentially, if you burn up even your first set you're on, essentially, on in the race, you may be in trouble. The tire strategy could be very interesting if there's cautions, precautions in the race. As well, I think it's going to be one where tire conservation is going to be key, because if you say use up your final set with, say, 75 to go for track position, and you get a 50-lap run to the caution late in the race, how good are those tires going to be in the end? So I think that's something also to think about, too, once we get to that point next week.
I remember a couple of months ago, it was Speed 51. We ran some super late models around here at Oxford Plains, and you ran into the same thing. Very long race. I believe it was about 150, about 200 laps that they ran around here. And the amount that you had to save the right rear tire was pretty tremendous. Obviously, when these cars are tight, you can try and do as much as you can to get the car to rotate and make its way through the corner and carry some speed, but you are going to be paying for that tremendously if you wear out that right rear tire and get it heated up just a little bit too much. And that's something that, especially as we look forward to the Oxford 250 tomorrow, and like you said, only 2 tire sets. And you throw what could be nearly about 40 cars out here on this racetrack at once, I think you're going to see a lot of spins. And once you spin and use up those tires and that, then you have to decide when to pit, how often other guys are going to pit. So track position, strategy, it's all going to come to a head next Saturday night. Of course, you won't want to miss that. That's going to be on Podium Esports. on Twitch and various other outlets. So make sure to tune into that one, a 250 lap main event, as we continue to look to set the field here for this race tonight. The lineup for this one already determined through their finishes in their opening heat races. Kevin McAdams, Jeffrey Stanton, Brian Mercurio, Keith Sherman, Warren Keith, Evan Rice, Carter Friesen, Michael P. Frisch, Adam Cadal, Gary Waterworth, Andy Margot, and Noah Carmichael. Those will be the 12 contenders in this first of our two 25-lap consolation races. And again, we're just waiting on these guys to sort it out and grid them up.
The one thing I will note, though, is we're seeing a lot of trouble already if you're looking at the pictures with how practice has been going so far. I'm hoping this is not the telling sign of how things are going, especially synchronized spins. I think once the racing is all focused, I think that's where everybody's going to be calm. Everyone's going to focus on the racing until lap 2, but they start bumping and banging each other. Again, I think it's going to be very busy around 3rd and 4th, if not 5th, right from the onset. Wouldn't be surprised to see several bump and runs tonight to try and move on forward and take away the bottom side as quick as possible.
It'll definitely be a question is who's able to get to the bottom side as quickly as possible. We know how coveted that is here, and we've seen it throughout all the heat races. Of course, the weather coming into play as well. Sun's starting to set a little bit more, get that track temp heated up a little more than what we've seen tonight. Only 70 degrees ambient temperature, but just a 90-degree track temp right now. A little bit warmer than what we've seen as the sun continues to set here. About, let's look at about 4:20, 4:30 local sim time. So that temperature will likely go down just a little bit as we continue to move forward.
I believe, Blake, actually, that's one of the core ones, if thinking, because some of the heats did have temps around 100 to 105 degrees. So that's more on the core end of the spectrum as the day moves on and some of the clouds start settling over. That's going to mean a lot more grip for some of these drivers, but in turn, some bit more quicker pace seen from some of the drivers. 15 flats set by the drivers in practice. Remember, in some of the races so far tonight, Blake, we've seen 16 flats be the pace in some of the heats.
That is true. Definitely some more grip out here. Just think that's gonna embolden these drivers, give them a lot of confidence, especially if you're not having to worry about getting loose on exit to really dive it in hard. Maybe not going to see so much contact on the exit of the corner like we've seen before, but yeah, it's definitely gonna continue to shift things up and change things up for these drivers that have to do their best to try and keep up with the changing racetrack, especially at a track like this that is so small that just the slightest difference in the track temperature and how much grip you have can make a pretty tremendous difference on how you drive this track. We're thinking about, almost improving anywhere from half a second to 7/10 of a second for some of these guys out here in these practice times. So that is a big difference at a track where you were running about 15 and a half seconds. You cut half a second out. That's a pretty tremendous difference. So definitely something that these drivers are going to have to look for. Is again, I believe we're just a couple moments away from getting things gridded up here. Not exactly sure. I think every driver is connected and everybody's ready to go. We're just waiting on them to give the good old thumbs up to grid them. Oh, there we go. Going to grid them up here in just a second.
Give it some decent time, to say the very least, for the drivers to get used to the extra grip, put some extra laps in. Grid's already been set. Let's take a look one more time, Blake, and see how these drivers are going to line up.
It'll be Kevin McAdams, as we mentioned earlier a couple of times. He will start from the pole for this race, of course, courtesy of his 5th place finish in heat number 1. It'll be Jeffrey Stanton on the outside of row number 1, with Brian Mercurio back on the inside of row number 2. Keith Sherman to his outside in the 4th position. Warren Keith will roll off in 5th. 6th will be Evan Rice. 7th is Carter Friesen. 8th is Michael Frisch. 9th is Adam Cadal. 10th will be Gary Waterworth. Again, we were mentioning his Twitch stream just a bit earlier. Good time to log in right now if you're interested in that. And then Andy Margot and Noah Carmichael will round out 11th and 12th. So we had 20 laps earlier, 25 laps to set the field for the Oxford 250 tomorrow. These drivers, if they're able to finish top 5, their night will be complete, as they cannot, or are not eligible rather, for the Trophy Dash main event taking place a little bit later on tonight. But obviously they're trying their best to get in the Oxford 250 for next week. If they don't, well, they're going to have to stick around a little bit longer and go after that last chance qualifier, also taking place a little bit later on tonight. So we'll get the 1-to-go signal this time by, and I think in the interim, Justin, it's turned up. I think these guys have just been getting a little anxious, like us up in the booth here. You give a long pause to these drivers, and it's just going to make them a little less patient when they finally get to go out there and let themselves loose.
Keep in mind, the drivers who do move on to the top 5 are going to be essentially drivers 17 through 26 come next week. So they're not going to want to give up these spots easy at all. Expect a lot of defense. As the green flag is waving, here we go.
And we get them started here as they rocket off into turn number 1. The Chase Chevrolet of Kevin McAdams, a great launch that time, but you already see the caution flag waving as they wreck in the back of the pack. It is the 33 of Adam Cadal involved and gets the worst end of this one. I believe it was some contact with the 85 of Carter Friesen as they got into 1. The target Toyota gets turned, and that will be it. Again, already early on, caution flag number 1 on lap number 1.
Adam got in there and got pin-pawed on the curbing just about and backed it down. He just lost control once he hit the door of, I believe that was Margot. And then in turn, heated up the back tires, looped it around, went off into the sand, and that, either way, would have triggered a caution by the time he spun around. So either way, we made it 1 corner.
We made it 1. And of course, you have to keep in mind these are the drivers that were just outside in terms of speed, or whether they got knocked out of the top 4 in their heat. So they are desperate to try and move on. So we completed just 1 lap officially on our scoring. As again, just like in the 20-lap heats, caution flags are not going to count here in these consolation races. And again, we'll just have to see how long we can rack them up, because obviously 25 laps can be a pretty lengthy trip up here to Oxford Plains without yellow flag laps counting. So we'll see how much longer these guys can try and keep it up. McAdams did a nice job on that final or last restart to try and get a nice launch there. We'll see if he can do it again. But I think you saw, Justin, a huge difference in how hard these drivers could drive into turn 1, courtesy of the cooler track temperature. Mercurio sent it in there on the bottom and was able to make it work to get up to where he was battling side by side for Jeffrey Stanton. Doesn't get the spot because of the caution, but it looked like he was well on his way to doing so. As McAdams will get him started once again. Mercurio, a nice launch for him as he'll get to the bottom side of Jeffrey Stanton, and they'll try to sort it out here in turn 1.
Stanton trying to arc it right across the nose, and Mercurio backed out at the last moment. He's now loose on the top side. Good save for the 94. This shuffles him back already to P3, however. Now one of the Rogue Energy machines, the Strawberry Kiwi flavored machine, takes away P3 just about. Had the check up for Mercurio, though. Keith now trying to also move away from the bubble spot.
Well, and that added grip on the bottom is going to make it a lot easier for these guys to roll, as Jeffrey Stanton able to get down in the 4th position. Closest side-by-side battle on the racetrack is right around that 5th transfer spot, as Warren Keith will get a nice shot from Michael Frisch, who pokes the nose of his Supra to the inside, but not able to get it done. Evan Rice breathing down his neck on the high side, trying to find a way by as they stack him up nearly 3 wide in the back of the pack. But right now, Frisch doing all he can and laying the bumper to Warren Keith to try and get by.
Keith that time in 3 and 4, clipped the left rear tire on the curbing. Frisch now being a little bit impatient. He's hit the bumper twice. Does he hit it a 3rd time? Tries to hit the corner panel. This time can't get it square. He's damaged a bit of the front nose for the Bar Visuals machine, but carrying some decent pace. The problem is he just can't get the run to get underneath quite yet with the checkups. How long will he stay patient? 18 to go. They'll also pass by some smoke. One driver had to pull the toe, and Carmichael, we stay green.
Yeah, Carmichael had to pull it off, and now Frisch, once again, he has enough for Keith to allow him on the bottom side. Keith going to check up and go for the crossover, but it's not going to be enough. Move Michael Frisch into that 5th and final transfer spot as he'll look to scurry away. Good battle going on right now for position number 2. Mercurio with Keith Sherman and Jeffrey Stanton in tow, trying to hang on right there as Mercurio still up there in that 2nd spot.
Mercurio doing a decent job holding on. Sherman in a spot where he can just be patient. Stanton as well in a decent spot to be patient as well. Remember, these are track position spots for the main event next week, however, if they finish inside the top 5. No one making aggressive moves in this grouping yet with 15 to go, all bumper to bumper. Stanton having to check up a bit for Sherman that time. Frisch starting to reel them in, though. Last time by, the 58 gained a 1/10 of a second on these 3.
Well, and Michael Frisch was actually the fastest car on the racetrack, even was about a 10th quicker than Kevin McAdams that last time by, but he paid for that lap a 10th slower than our race leader. But all he cares about, at least for the time being, is that he was also quicker than Warren Keith that last trip around. So they'll approach the stripe now as they take what'll be 13 laps to go. Kevin McAdams has stretched his lead to about 6 or 7 car lengths over Brian Mercurio, but they are nose to tail, nearly a train off of turn 4, as it's Mercurio, Sherman, and Stanton still running nose to tail for that 2nd spot.
No one's making any aggressive moves for spots on the grid. They want to try and make it to the main event. No sudden movement still. Mercurio still holding on. He's been losing a bit of ground to McAdams. It's 1.1 seconds the gap, but no one has to be expected. Electing to use the bumper with everyone secure, especially since 5th spot has already ran away from 6th spot by almost 2 seconds. That's also in part because it's now a 4-car train. Frisch, he's the fastest car on the track once again. However, now he gets the pleasure of checking up for this machine in front with 9 to go.
And Frisch has the opportunity to really shake things up if he so chooses, and how hard he wants to push to try and get some track position for the Oxford 250 next week. Obviously, he's caught Stanton, he's caught Sherman, who are directly in front of him. How hard is he going to push it to get his nose on the inside of one of those Chevrolets that are in front of him, a trio of Chevys, as he chases them down, as he'll again catch the back of the line, check up, but there's only so much you can do once you catch this. You have to get the run off the corner, and he's just not able to get it that last time by. Just the slightest checkup here, Justin, will really slow you up, and even they have some lap traffic just ahead of them in the form of the 48 machine of Andy Margot, as he'll let these 3 on by, 3 or 4 cars.
Very good job by Margot to move right out of the way. Doesn't hold anybody up. That might hold a bit up. Frisch gone the corner exit. Other than that, nice and clean, but these guys are faster than everyone behind, so they're in a great spot. A good example, when you think back to the eNASCAR Ignite series a couple years ago, Blake, the most dominant driver in the playoffs, leading up to set up the format for the finale, he ended up trying to make a pass for 1 spot, which would have been a couple spots in track position for the main event. He crashed. Guess what? He started the back end of the field for the feature and ended up getting involved in an incident at Martinsville and flipped up and over in his modified. It was a series that he had dominated in, Blake. You don't want to do that if you're any of these drivers, where you're in good, comfortable positions to try and move on, and you end up losing it all with 1 attempt of a pass.
Well, you have to think, after you take the checkered flag in just 2 laps in this Consi, you obviously have 250 more laps to make up that track position. So, although you want to get a spot here and there if you can, as you'll see Frisch, he'll drive up to the back bumper of the 94 as they'll get popsicle sticks in the air this time by. 2 laps to go for Kevin McAdams, who, as you can see, has stretched his lead to about the full length of the back straightaway here. Backstretch. I don't know if you can really call it a straightaway here at Oxford Plains. Nearly not a straight spot of this racetrack. So Kevin McAdams, white flag in the air. 1 more trip around for the Chase Bank Chevrolet, but the battle is on right here for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th positions. Jeffrey Stanton going to make a nice little dive off of 3. It looks like Sherman's going to give him the spot, or at least give him the room. And Sherman is actually going to end up in 4th, nearly in 5th, as Frisch made a hard charge there at the line. So give it to McAdams, Mercurio, Jeffrey Stanton, Keith Sherman, and Michael Frisch, your top 5. Evan Rice, he'll be the first driver to have to compete in the last chance qualifier taking place in a little bit tonight. Warren Keith, Adam Cadell, Carter Friesen, and Gary Waterworth will round out the top 10. Anthony Margot in 11th, scored 1 lap down. And Noah Carmichael pulled off the track. He finished 20 laps down in this 25-lap event. So McAdams, Mercurio, Stanton, and Sherman, as well as Michael Frisch, will move on into the Oxford 250 next week. Their night tonight, as far as it's concerned, is over, as they'll have to look forward to getting into the main show next week. And we'll move on to Consi number 2.
Yeah, this one I think is also going to be fairly eventful with some of the drivers. We've seen Jameson do a good job fighting with Murky and his respective heat. I think this, though, is a bit of a toss-up. Donovan Strauss we've seen struggle a bit with the setup before. Brandon Cattell's looking to try and keep his car clean after being in a comfortable spot before. Well, he got a bit of payback. Then you have Cosmin Iachino, who is a very talented driver in his own right in several races for Nexus Esports and a part of that program, who is also going to have to deal with traffic around that bubble spot. There are not a lot of names you can really pencil in, if at all, in this race, to be honest, especially with some of the track position they'll have to deal with.
They will have to deal with track position. And by the way, correction on the event format. Obviously, LCQ will be taking place 50 laps, but that'll take place before we get the 250-lap main feature next week. So as far as what's on tap tonight, you got Consi number 2 up for 25 laps taking place here very quickly. And then obviously the Trophy Dash for 30 laps taking place tonight. The LCQ will take place tomorrow night, or next week, rather. Again, I'll issue a correction on that. And again, we'll be set from the consolation races. So Evan Rice will lead on the pole next week for that 50-lap LCQ. So once again, we have to do a little bit of hopping of the servers as we'll hop into our next consolation race. A couple of drivers who looked awfully strong and also had a little bit of contact in their earlier heat races, have the chance to duke it out and see if they can avoid some of the carnage that took place for them earlier on tonight. As they continue to sort things out. Again, the lineup for that one already set, as we mentioned earlier, by the results of their heat races that they ran a little bit earlier. So it'll be Rich Jameson and Ryan Naraki who will roll off from row number 1. And again, 25 laps, caution laps will not count. But as we saw a little earlier, Justin, some of these drivers were involved in several incidents a little earlier on tonight. You actually get Brandon Cattell and Arnold Columbia, who we saw earlier, the retaliation from Columbia. He starts directly behind Brandon Cattell in 9th and 11th, respectively. So that should be something to watch. You saw a couple of drivers take issue with Ryan Naraki earlier on in the night. So Donovan Strauss going to have to start from 12th. He was used up a little bit. So a lot of guys who I'm sure are very ready to get after it and not afraid to use their bumpers either.
I don't know if it's going to boil over from the battles for 9th and 11th on the starting grid between Columbia and Lon with what we've seen for sure, absolutely, from Cattell. Because, again, it seemed like that Columbia wanted to get some almost anger out of his system just about with that trouble. Other than that, I think it's still going to be game on. Ding, 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 get the boxing gloves and ring the bell along the side of the ring. I think we're going to see a wrestling match for some of these drivers because, again, there's no clear-cut drivers in this race for the most part outside of a couple. And even then, they don't have the track position who I think can race their way into the race based on speed alone. It might come down to track position, and whoever stays out of the trouble the least moves on in the race. If they end up getting in tons of trouble, well, you end up flipping over like that 11.
Exactly. So we'll see if that happens. Hopefully, we don't see too many drivers catching air here at Oxford Plains. That would not be a good thing. But obviously, with these curbs, and of course, you even have kind of what are makeshift ramps here with the kind of hills that are around these light poles here that obviously Oxford Plains has in real life. We'll see if those guys can keep it on the ground. Right now, they're looking out in practice as these guys will make a couple more laps before we get started for Consi number 2 tonight. Fastest car on the track, I was going to say it's Donovan Strauss, but now Andrew Schwartz is laying down the fastest lap at 14.95. Wasn't much of a factor in his heat race.
Yep.
Started up in the back of the field and didn't do too much, but obviously has some speed in his machine.
You know the interesting thing, though, Blake, and I was curious why he did this almost. He elected to start at the back every single caution flag. He went down to the pit lane, went directly to the rear end of the field, and just went from there. So I think he was almost afraid to try and go through the hornet's nest and try and make moves. I don't know what we'll see from him. If he's got that speed in the race, I'm curious to see if he's going to be able to carry it on to gaining positions. And is he going to be willing enough to try and make moves to get himself in the race on speed, in terms of positioning, rather?
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see that. I know, again, Andrew Schwartz, another regular that if you've been around the FTF Racing League for any length of time, obviously somebody that's very capable, especially on road courses, of running very, very well. So feel like that has to play into his skill set here as well, here at Oxford Plains. But we'll once again go ahead and set the lineup for you here tonight. It'll be Rich Jameson and Ryan Naraki, as mentioned earlier. They'll roll off from the first row. Row number 2 will be Ethan Murky and Ryan Pandashio to his outside. Cosmin Yanishu as well as Tristan Hagenson in row number 3. Row number 4 will be Craig Hawkins and Kyle Short. 9th and 10th will be Andrew Schwartz and Arnold Columbia, respectively. Donovan Strauss and Chris Wetz, who, another guy that we'll have to eye on. He would have started on the pole in his heat race earlier, and unfortunately, because of some connection issues, he finished last in his heat. He'll roll off from 12th, so some awfully strong drivers in Schwartz, Strauss, Wetz, who start at the back of this field, and they'll only have 25 laps to try and get to the front, as we'll get the one-to-go signal this time around. Again, Rich Jameson in control of the field was very close to transferring in through his heat into the Trophy Dash tonight. Came up just short, and as mentioned earlier, Ryan Naraki, a little bit of issues earlier for the driver of the T-Mobile Ford Mustang. We'll see if they can all sort it out, as we'll wait for the iRacing.com pace car to pull onto the safety of the pit lane, and the field will be under the control once again of Rich Jameson, as we have 25 more laps to settle it out and see who transfers in, who has to go to the LCQC next week. Great launch for the driver of the 07. He's able to launch up into the lead. Green flag in the air. Rich Jameson takes the lead. Naraki in second. Murky in third. And how about Cosmin? Big move out of the Splash and Go machine. He's able to rocket his way up to fourth.
Like I said, he can do more than design. He can drive too. The battle for 5th position starting to heat up already. Pandashio up the track big time. He loses the spot. Donovan Strauss now joins the fun as the battle for 3rd now heats up as well. Open up the freight train because Murky now loses the bottom. He's loose. Hagenstein's now pushed into the 11 by Strauss as he now moves in the bubble spot.
And Hagenstein doing all he can to try and hang on. Big move out of Strauss, but now Tristan not able to get to the bottom side. Here comes Chris Wetz up into the 6th position. Change up front as well. Ryan Naraki goes to the top spot after he and the 86 battled side by side for a couple of laps. So the T-Mobile Mustang goes to the point here at Oxford Plains. The Splash and Go machine in 3rd. Donovan Strauss has already moved up into 4th, and Chris Wetz now in sole possession of that 5th and final transfer spot.
And keep in mind, this is some of the coldest track conditions these drivers are dealing with right now. 84 degrees Fahrenheit, the track temp. We've seen it was down to as low as 86 in the other Consi. Drivers before in some of the heats had to deal with 100+ degrees Fahrenheit. So the extra grip seems to be helping Donovan Strauss rotate the car better and have more pace. He wants to try and gain some more spots, though. He's not backing down to the back bumper of Cosmin. It's Nexus battling on with one of the Berlin Klugerman Esports media members, along with somebody a part of Horizon for his Road to Pro campaign. He takes away P3.
And he's going to do just that. Nice little shot there from Cosmin, but Strauss is able to keep it going. but that's going to damage the front nose of that Splash and Go graphics Mustang. You see a nice shot of it there, a little bit of a hood bent up, but at a track like Oxford Plains, that's just short track racing. But now Cosman under assault. Chris Wetz, who has marched his way all the way back from the 12th starting spot, has worked his way up to 5th and is now looking for 4th. As you see another side-by-side battle, Donovan Strauss is on a tear through this field. In 10 laps, he started in 11th. He is now all the way up to 2nd.
He's like a completely different driver in this race. I'll tell you what, from his heat race after his struggles with tightness in his heat. Jamison, though, he is slipping back in fast. Misses the bottom again in 1 and 2. The Turn 4 Motorsports machine struggling on apex, it seems. Cosman Yoshino takes away the bottom side. Chris Wetz now tries to also follow him through. Now Hagenstein, if this train continues on the bottom side, might be able to move into the bubble spot now in his Silver 82. The photographer looking to try and fight, all while Wetz tries to rip away P4 away from Jamison.
Well, Wetz is going to move up and has the preferred line on the inside, the 86. Where does he go? He's having to protect with the 82 directly behind him. A close battle up here in the top 6 as Strauss has his sights set on Ryan Naraki. They crossed halfway that last time by on lap 14. It'll be 12 laps to go. This time by, Naraki still hanging on, but it's all eyes on that 5th and final transfer spot. The 86, the 82 going at it here at Oxford Plains.
Jamison again pushing up again. Wheel hop. He's scraping a bit of the chassis, in fact. I think that's what's partly causing it. Where he's entering the corner, Blake, is causing him to bottom out. Hagenstein takes advantage. Huge shot from behind by Jamison. Jamison wants 5th spot back. Gives a bit of a door. He spins around to the bottom of the racetrack. Just avoids the pit boxes. We stay green as he nearly comes up into traffic.
And that'll bump Jamison out of it. He came over the radio and was not too pleased with the driver of the 82. So are we going to see a situation like we saw earlier between Brandon Cattell and Arnold Columbia? If Jamison feels like he's well out of this thing, you never know if retaliation is going to be on his mind. But for the time being, Hagenstein now has possession of 5th place as he continues to pull away from a couple drivers behind him. Columbia Short and Schwartz trying to kind of jostle for position behind him in 6th. That's allowed these front 2 to get away. Wetz up to 4th, Cosman up to 3rd. Strauss is in 2nd, but right now Ryan Naraki sitting pretty up at the front of the field, nearly 3/10 faster than Strauss that last time by. He has opened up a significant lead, almost 2.5 seconds over Donovan Strauss. So Naraki's sitting pretty here with 6 to go, but again, I think the main question here, Justin, is Jamison going to back things up and maybe try to have the last word in that battle with the 82?
Looking to lap times for Jamison, I don't think that's going to be the case. No, is a little bit slower in the 16.4s, but it's not like he's completely backing down. Now he's starting to back down to 60 miles an hour in the corners all of a sudden. He's been letting it roll a fair bit all of a sudden. Just after you said that, I'm wondering if he heard you.
Well, let's see. That last time by, he loses only 2/10, so he's going to have to do a little bit more in that regards to really fall a lap down and really lose some time. But right now, Ryan Naraki, again, sitting in a great spot right now. He's got a little bit of lap traffic in front of him to try and deal with in the form of Ethan Murkey, as he'll take 2 to go this time by. The FedEx Toyota will go to his outside to let him have that spot, as Naraki easily on his way to moving on to the Oxford 250 next week. Strauss hanging on to 2nd with Wetz closely behind him. Tristan actually moves up into the 4th spot as Cosman still some heavy damage on that machine, no doubt playing a factor there. Cosman will move back into 5th and give up that spot. But as they work through 3 and 4 for the final time, it'll be Ryan Naraki who goes to victory lane here in the last of our 2 consolation races. He'll move on to the Oxford 250. And then you have Donovan Strauss, Chris Wetz, Tristan Hagenstein, and Cosmiani Shu, who will be the final drivers to transfer in tonight. Everybody else, Kyle Short, Andrew Schwartz, Arnold Columbia, Rich Jamison, Craig Hawkins, Ryan Padicio, and Ethan Murphy will have to wait until next week to get their shot in the 50-lap LCQ. Naraki will burn it down as he takes home the victory in our final of our 2 consies for tonight. And of course, on tab, what we've been waiting for here on this Saturday night, no points involved, a true 30-lap sprint to the finish, winner take all. Of course, payouts as high as $160 up for grabs for our top 16 tonight, as they'll have to move forward and try to make their way through what's going to be a pretty crazy 30-lap feature, Justin.
And remember, with that craziness too, as Johnson clarifies, our director for tonight, that it is for points, remember, it's going to be important track position. We've talked about it a lot tonight, Blake, that you want to have it and have it up at the front. These drivers are not going to be patient. David Schildhouse talked about it. He was expecting a lot of bumping and painting to try and make sure that some of the drivers were inside the top 5, if not top 10 for the race next week. I think we're going to see that, especially with some of the drivers having a little bit of fun, others looking to try and say, I don't want to start in 16th, I'd rather start in P1 and take the 6 off the number.
We'll certainly see if they're able to do that. Of course, not only are these guys going up for grabs to try and win this race, obviously how they finish here will determine the top 16 qualifying order that they'll run in next week. And of course, you have to think about drivers have long memories, Justin. They don't soon forget. So how aggressive do you want to get here in the Trophy Dash? Because obviously any contact, any aggression towards a driver is likely going to carry over into next week when obviously more money, more prizes are on the line. It's the main event. Everybody's looking forward to it. So how aggressive do you want to be in a race like this where you're really going for broke? But obviously you have to keep in mind, if you really want to go after it next week, you have to be mindful of that, because you can be used up this week, and sure enough, somebody's going to look to do the same thing to you when everything, when all the big money's on the line.
I'll be honest, I'm one of those who is very patient, just reverse the ride until I can get some decent track position, take advantage of the mistakes of the others, and go from there. You rarely will see me, mind you, bump somebody out of the way as a driver. If I put my bumper on you, I'm very, very mad. Let's put it that way, Blake. So I'm the type who is going to be exactly the opposite of some of these drivers this evening, to be quite frank. This is going to be very wild. Like I said, you've got drivers who are streamers with very big bases. Drivers we've seen in Podium Series, mind you, compete very well. Drivers who are part of the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Drivers who, mind you, I've seen perform well in the road courses, more so than the oval side, such as Brandon Hawken. Then you have Justin Malillo. So it's going to be very fun, I think, tonight.
Well, certainly so. I think these guys are gonna have a lot of fun here tonight, and of course set the main order for everything that's coming up here next week. Of course, we want to remind you that next week's Oxford 250 for the FTF Grand National Series, presented by Splash and Go Graphics, will be broadcast live on Podium Esports next week. So we'll change the banner from STN to Podium next week to be able to bring that one to you. And as we load into the server here, Justin, we continue to talk about cooling track temperatures, and this one is no different. We're once again in the coolest track that we've seen all night. We saw the track temperature earlier as high as 100 degrees. Now 75. So tons of grip, tons of speed going to be out there on display tonight.
Yeah, these drivers, I think, are going to be able to push at least another 10th or two. It's also going to help on some of the corner exits, absolutely. But I think it's also going to be a spot where we might see a bit of wheel hopping. We've seen actually a decent bit of it in the last Consi especially. And some of these drivers feel like they can send it a bit more deeper, as you've seen. The problem is you send it too deep and you heat up some of the brakes too much and you end up missing your braking mark, let's say. You're sailing off half a lane, and that's when somebody's going to try and dive underneath your quarter panel. So I think this is going to be where they're going to be holding on for dear life to try and hold on to that bottom side and make sure that they don't get freight train and move into the back of the field for starting instead up the front.
Well, and the thing with that, Justin, you obviously have to look forward to the fact that, we've seen a lot of time gap, I guess is the
Yes.
proper way to describe it. In terms of this field all night, that you have drivers of varying skill levels out here all sharing the same racetrack. Well, these are the top 16. These are the guys that were fastest in their heats. They've made their way into this race. And so that margin is going to shrink here. They're going to be running much closer than they have all night. And obviously, you bring in, like you were talking about, all the skill, all the talent that are some of the best sim racers on the oval side here in iRacing, duking it out. So it's going to be harder to pass. And again, I just think the aggression level is going to go up on a night like tonight.
That's what I'm trying to get to the point of. The aggression's going to be there. Right from the get-go. Drivers have not been afraid to show that. Gonna be interesting, to say the very least. By the way, fastest car in practice, Michael Cozy Jr. at the moment. That car, by the way, which is spun after saying the time. They're in 14.892s to 14.9s for the fastest drivers. Compare that to the start of the night when they ran 16-second flats. The pace has definitely picked up 1.1 to 1.2 seconds with this cooler track temp.
It certainly picked up, but we also, you do have to keep in mind that even as our track temperature has continued to go further and further down throughout the night, that the tire fall off is still very present here. Obviously not as drastic as if we had a 100 or 120 degree track temperature, but there is still pretty significant fall off. We saw it taking place. It was about a second near the end of that last heat, which of course ran about 25 laps, at least 24 lap dash there to the end that was under the green flag. So there's still a bit of fall off here. Obviously, like we mentioned, not as drastic as what we were saying earlier, but enough about that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the FTF Grand National Series starting lineup for tonight's main event. It's going to be Brandon Hawken and Derek Justice, some of the most successful FTF drivers in history that will make up the front row. The NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series driver, the furthest one up to have that prestigious honor is Kane Cook. Michael Cozy would be to his outside in row number 2. Roswell Harlow will start in 5th, Jake Poulin in 6th. Inside of row number 4 goes to Chris Overland and Evan Brinker to his outside. 9th starting spot will go to Nate Stewart, and 10th will be Shane Thorane. 11th will be Blake Reynolds, 12th Ryan Williams, 13th Seth the Merchant, 14th goes to Dylan Smith, 15th to Justin Malillo, and rounding out the field, we spoke to him earlier, he expects a lot of wrecking here in this race. That's David Schodehouse, who starts in the 16th starting spot.
I'm curious how some of the strategy games are going to be played here, Blake, with some of the crashes expected, as mentioned, of course, by drivers like Schodehouse and company, if they say, going to back off a couple car lengths, let them go crazy, or if they're going to try and be one of the aggressors. It's going to be about finding that balance, I think, especially with today, with this setting the starting position for next week's race.
It's certainly going to be that, as the lights will go off the pace car. And just want to report on the grid. We were reading the grid as it should be. Nathan Stewart, unfortunately, not in the server. So 9th starting spot, he'll have to roll off from 16th next week and won't have a shot at any of the prizes in terms of leading laps or whatnot tonight. So Nate Stewart, now he connects, so he's going to miss the grid, but we'll see if he can get in it, as now Hawken and Justice lean on each other as we get the green flag. 30 laps left to boot here from the Oxford Plains Speedway, and Derek Justice not able to get to the bottom side, as I'm sure he was hoping. Kane Cook to his inside as they battle and allow Brandon Hawken to scurry away and lead lap 1.
There goes Nate Stewart and just missed, stayed on the lead lap. He was flooring it in the pit lane. Everybody else flooring it into 3 and 4. Cook to the inside of Derek Justice for P2. He tries to shuffle the North Force machine out of the way. As the Baskin-Robbins machine moves the bottom, Harlow forced back to the top by Michael Cozy, who moves to the bottom after getting shuffled out to the start.
And Michael Cozy barely saw an opening, and he went for it. As you can see, that bottom side, especially with all the grip here on the racetrack, that track temperature even going to cool off more with the cloud cover that you see here. And so they are rolling right now. 65 is on the outside and dropping like a rock as Roswell Harlow trying to find a way to get to the bottom side, but it's going to be hard with Blake Reynolds in the vanilla Coca-Cola Chevrolet trying to get to his inside. He's got Seth the Merchant looking to pounce right behind him as well.
These speed drivers are very, very hungry for positions. Harlow continuing to get shuffled out. You mentioned back all the way to 8th position. Finally finds a hole in front of Ryan Williams. Evan Brinker lines up single file. Everybody now joins along the choo-choo train along the bottom side of the racetrack. By the way, we talked about Shieldhouse from the back of the field and the question of, are you going to be the aggressor or are you going to be the one very patient? Shieldhouse is being the aggressor. He's up +3. Compare that to Justin Malillo. He is staying P15, about a couple seconds back from the rest of the pack.
Well, and it's really because this is just a long single file line, except now jumping out of line once again, the 65 of Harlow in the back of the pack cannot find a way to stay on the bottom side as he lets Ryan Williams and now Evan Brinker going to look to his inside as they nearly make contact into one. And even behind him, you have the 38 machine trying to make his way by, but it looks like the 65 will be able to get to the bottom side. Oh, scratch that. But otherwise, Justin, what I was going to mention, long train on the inside line right now, 2nd through 10th really, separated between each other. It's nearly half a car length or even less between a lot of these guys, and I think it just shows that bottom line there's so much grip, and these guys aren't sliding around nearly as much as we saw them earlier.
Good example, too, of drivers not wanting to give up that bottom side and let somebody in is Harlow's all the way back in P12, P13 right now. And he's wondering, why is no one giving me space? He actually asked on the radio. I'm surprised no one's let me in, or nobody's let me in. Even Nate Stewart, who is a lap down, isn't letting him on in. So this has just been a disaster of a run for this trophy dash for starting position. All the way to the back end of the grid, he needs a bit of luck to try and gain some of the track position back.
Certainly so, and you mentioned that he started on the inside in the 5th position. So he had the track position, but you saw he got to the high side just once. Oh, there's contact here on the front straightaway. Dylan Smith saved it, but got a little bit of help from behind in the form of Nathan Stewart. Again, Stewart a lap down, not battling for position. He gives a little tap to Dylan Smith, who is able to keep us under the green flag, saving his race car. So, again, one of those things we talked about, being aggressive and remembering next week. I know Dylan Smith, don't think he'll forget that. Nate Stewart getting into the back of him, especially Stewart being a lap car and not for position. But we'll go ahead and look at the front of the field. 2nd through 8th, barely separated amongst each other. It's still Kane Cook holding on to the front of this train. Brandon Hawken pulled away and is pulled away by about 3 or 4 car lengths, but everyone's second on back is nose to tail.
I'll be quite frank, I've never seen Brandon Hawken drive in an oval, let alone in a stock car. I'm just wondering, why doesn't he do it more often? Because I'm pretty sure he can smoke a lot of drivers by racing this car more often than what we see him in his preferred car. Mind you, in the Miatas, in the Mazda MX-5, he's just running away from the Coke drivers. He's quicker than the Coke drivers. Wow. By the way, Derek Justice now just got pried off the bottom side by Chris Overland.
And now Justice going to have to make a big move there to get to the bottom, and he does so before Blake Reynolds able to pounce. But now, here comes the Coca-Cola Vanilla Chevrolet, and he'll turn him sideways. Nice save by Derek Justice, but it looks like the angle he set that car is enough to trigger a caution flag. And again, we saw Justice there. Well, I don't even know if you really put that on any one driver, Justin. Reynolds is obviously being aggressive. He sees an opening on the bottom. He's going to take it. But likewise, Justice is letting that car in front of him go so that he can slam the door, and then just wasn't there in time. So both drivers.
Bit of the curbing by the back straightaway. He was trying to go for a higher arc to bring it on down, and Reynolds just took advantage. Seen the opening, dived right on in, but Justice showing that composure to save that car like we've seen in Road to Pro throughout the campaign. going to lose him several positions, though, and because he was the trigger for the caution, towards the back of the field he'll go.
And towards the back, he will go. We'll see if he'll come down pit road and get some fresh tires. May be advised to do so. Doesn't really have anything to lose. We saw Justin Malillo in the T-Mobile Ford Mustang, who, as we were talking about earlier, is just kind of sitting back and letting things happen. He came down, took 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles to try and make his way up through the field. As far as tire limits are concerned, actually, no, he was repairing some damage on that machine. No tires available for these drivers to try and run in this thing. So 6-second stop there for Justin Malillo. Just came down, probably put some fuel in it. Helps the rotation of the car just a little bit. These guys are stuck on the same set of tires throughout this race. But one thing, Justin, we saw a single file train form there, but one thing about restarts, it's going to shuffle these guys up and force them to go too wide once again.
And this is going to be fun, I think. Cozy Jr. has been fairly quick. I almost thought he was held up just a touch by Cook. He's been looking fairly good. Just the first caution flag of this trophy dash. This is going to be intriguing. Reynolds, he's not been afraid to shut the door. Overland, he's not been afraid to shut the door. Get ready for a lot of door shutting.
That's certainly going to be what we're going to see in our future. We'll take the green flag. 11 laps to go here for Brandon Hawken, trying to hang on as you see the mass exodus to the bottom side of the racetrack as everyone tries to get in line. The one who's left out hanging to dry is the 59 of Seth DeMerchant, running up in the 6th position. He and Ryan Williams will get tagged together, move DeMerchant on back. He's going to try to send it in here hard, but it looks like it's not going to happen for him. He's going to allow the 38 to go by and still try and find a way to get to the bottom side. He, along with Evan Brinker and David Schildhouse, all trying to get to the bottom.
And this is exactly what we've seen before with the 65 of Harlow. You get stuck on the top, you're going right to the back of the choo-choo train. And for DeMerchant, there's just no space for him to dive down. In fact, he's getting help from the bottom side. Jake Poulin nearly spins him around on the 00. He tries to make the bottom move once again work. He hits the curbing, nearly back to the quarter panel once again. It's DeMerchant trying to squeeze his way down here.
And I think DeMerchant could have done it, but he got checked up by the 38 in front of him. I think he got Poulin loose enough to be able to get him by, as now they're 3 wide there for that position. DeMerchant recognizes it. Great crossover move there, but perhaps an even better move from Jake Poulin. He goes to the bottom side 3 wide, and now they're finally able to sort things out. DeMerchant now on the charge once again, looking to try and catch Jake Poulin for that 7th spot. Is even a battle brewing up here for the 2nd spot. Once again, Michael Cozy was all over the back bumper of Kane Cook that last time by.
And I'm curious if he's going to try and make this move. Remember, he's curling a spot to line to the bottom. Overland now wants to take away that bottom line starting position. Over the back bumper of Winval 8820. Chris Overland looking to still make the move in the 60. Backs up the corner this time. 3 laps to go. Rides the bumper once again. Pushes him through the apex. Cozy Jr. checks up a touch as Kane Cook has its additional technical issues.
It
lost him spots.
It certainly did. He reappeared back in the 5th position. So Kane Cook, a victim of the aliens, as he will fall back a couple of spots as we take the 2 laps to go marker. So big misfortune there for Kane Cook, who, of course, anybody who watches the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, you see the issue persist a little bit in that series as well. But they take the white flag. Brandon Hawken, what a spanking he's put on his field. Started from the pole, has led them all, and made it look easy. The TWB Incorporated Chevrolet off of 4 is going to go to victory lane here in the Trophy Dash for tonight, setting the field for tomorrow's Oxford 250. For Michael Cozy, it works out as he finishes up in 2nd. Chris Overland in 3rd. Blake Reynolds and Kane Cook going to round out your top 5. Seth DeMerchant, Ryan Williams, Jake Poulin, Evan Brinker, David Schildhouse, your top 10. Derek Justice, Shane Thorane, Roswell Harlow, Dylan Smith, Justin Malillo, and Nate Stewart rounding out your field. And even, Justin, I heard a couple of drivers commenting during the race about Nathan Stewart, reminding him, hey, bud, you're a lap car, and we'll have to see if that comes into play next week. But no doubt about it, Brandon Hawken got the track position that we knew was going to be so important, and he did a masterful job of hanging on to it. And, he was the fastest car tonight. Great job for the fellow Canadian. I'm sure you're happy.
Yeah, what a drive for Brandon Hawken. Again, I'm just stunned that he did this on an oval. I haven't seen this personally from him at all in a stock car. Again, I'm wondering, does he make the swap from mainly roadside with Movado and go into the oval side? Because honestly, he might have the pace to do it. And he's got at least the poise to burn out 3/4 of a lap without going into the dirt, so there's that. One thing to note, though, that one of Dylan Smith, he talked about some of the pace we've seen from him in the past and what you've seen, especially in FTF racing. Apparently, his wheel came uncalibrated during the pace lap and still wheeled it to 14.
Yeah, that's definitely a nice job from him. But I know you're surprised when you say you haven't seen Brandon Hawken do it on an oval. Well, I've raced against this guy enough to know that he is much more than capable of getting it done in an oval. Any of these NR 2003 leagues that are still up and running, whether it's open setup, whether it's fixed setup, if they're running and somebody's at the front, it's not a surprise to see Brandon Hawken amongst that list. Definitely has become, an amazing oval racer. But like you said, isn't exactly his foray, not something he does all too often. Out here on the iRacing service is, he loves doing road course racing, is obviously very capable of that, but, he just took it to a bunch of Coke drivers. Justin, it's not some little fluke where, oh, look, this road course guy is pretty decent at ovals. I mean, he took a field full of some of the best in the business. You talk about Derek Justice, Seth the Merchant, a handful of eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series drivers, and just took it to them and spanked them. So that's not a small feat. This guy is talented and has the speed to get it done.
Yeah, a very talented resume. As we talked about, raced a lot in the various predecessors to iRacing for different series with several different championships, runs in real life with go-karts. What a job by him tonight. I think he might open a couple of eyes, to say the very least. The question is, can he carry it into the main event? Also keeping an eye on some of the air drivers, especially with 3 Coke drivers inside the top 5 for the starting grid, and one Michael Cozy Jr. putting on a pretty good show in speed as well to come away with the top 3 finish.
And actually, we'll go ahead and run down the starting order. Of course, we went through the finishing order for tonight's Trophy Dash 30-lap event. But why don't we go ahead and set the stage for the 26 drivers who have locked their way into the main event, the Oxford 250, next weekend. So obviously, Brandon Hawken will lead the field to green, courtesy of his win here tonight. It'll be Michael Cozy in second, Chris Overland in third, with Blake Reynolds to his outside. Kane Cook, because of his connection issues, will end up starting in fifth rather than in second, which, I mean, honestly, you could argue that that's almost a better outcome for Kane Cook, because he gets to start on the inside of row number 3. Seth the Merchant to his outside in 6th. It'll be Ryan Williams in 7th, Jake Poulin in 8th. 9th is Evan Brinker, and rounding out the top 10 will be David Schildhaus.
Derek Justice, 11th spot. Shane Theron in 12th position. Roswell Harlow started inside the top 5. Lost 8 spots in the span of 30 green flag laps. Dylan Smith holds on to 14th with an uncalibrated wheel. Justin Malillo finishes in 15th. While Nate Stewart, he tried as hard as he could to try to lap himself and bumping and banging just about everybody on the way, but P16 is where he'll lie, as he was the only car a lap down, missing a chance to be on the lead lap by about 5 seconds if he got out of the pit lane, and or got a caution on the first lap.
Yeah, he definitely was close to that. But the rest of the field set by our consolation races tonight. Kevin McAdams, Ryan Naraki will start in row number 9. Brian Mercurio and Donovan Strauss from 19th and 20th. Jeffrey Stanton in 21st. 22nd will be Chris Wetz. 23rd will be Keith Sherman. 24th, Tristan Hagenstein. 25th will be Michael Frisch. And 26th will be Cosmin Yanishu. Those will be the 26 drivers who are locked in next week. For the LCQ, this these are the drivers who will try to finish in the top 6 out of 14 to compete. So about half of them will round out the Oxford 250 field. They'll be led to the green flag next week on Podium Esports for 50 laps by Evan Rice, Kyle Short in second, Warren Keith will be in third, Andrew Schwartz in fourth, Adam Cadall in fifth, Arnold Columbia sixth, Carter Friesen will be in seventh, Rich Jameson eighth, ninth will be Gary Waterworth, and 10th Craig Hawkins. 11th goes to Andy Margot, 12th Ryan Pandesio, 13th Noah Carmichael, and 14th will be Ethan Murky. So those will be the 6 drivers looking to lock their way in for 32 locked-in spots into the main event next week. Of course, some provisionals may be given out as well next week. We'll have to let you know about that, as a couple provisionals may sneak their way into the show. But Justin, any final thoughts before we leave Oxford Plains, before we come back next week?
There are some very talented drivers, first off, who are affiliated with FTF, and I think once they make the full transition to iRacing pretty soon, this may be one of the most popular leagues in all of iRacing, with some of the talent, and some of the personalities, and some of the driving styles, and clashes of sets driving styles. It's going to be entertaining. I think the Oxford for 250 is also going to be very entertaining, because you've got plenty of fast drivers in the race, and you've got some fast drivers, too, who are going to be in that LCQ. Noteworthy Brandon Cattell, who missed his consolation race. This is going to be fun to see what happens once we go over to Podium Esports next week to see who can come away with the Oxford 250 in what should be an absolutely fun race.
No doubt about it, Justin. The move to iRacing has definitely been a success for FTF Racing, and we'll look forward to bringing it to you next week. All 250 laps here from the Oxford Plains Speedway will be live on the Podium Esports Twitch channel, and we'll be happy to bring you, and hopefully I'll be on the call for that race alongside some of my partners over at Podium Esports. So, for Zach Johnson on the controls and Justin Prince along here in the booth, I'm Blake McCandless saying so long from the Oxford Plains Speedway, where once again we bid farewell, and congratulations to Brandon Hawken, your winner tonight in the 50 lap trophy dash. And we will see you next week live on Podium Esports. Good night, everybody.